This is our third session, which is basically on social protection and right-based approaches. Being getting late, I want to invite Dr. Safdar Sohail Saab. Please come on the stage. We have another guest from BIS, Mir Ahmed, DG BIS. Please come here, sir. And from the Department of Sociology, I request Dr. Rabia Gul to come here on the stage. This is a very interesting session today. We have very amazing guests. Our two guests are offline today with us, and other we have at online by Zoom meeting. So first of all, I would like to invite Mr. Mir. He is the Director General at the BIS, Benazir Income Support Program. He has 20-year experience in the field of operations at ICT, Information Technology, and he is running a lot of work with the technology operation with the government of Pakistan. So, sir, I would like to request you, please come on the rostrum to complete your task. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Clark MSAB and the worthy and honorable faculty members. Thank you for inviting me here. And so I happen to be Director General for one of the most prominent and one of the most prestigious organization when it comes to social protection in Pakistan, named BISP. BISP is an institution which falls under a division which is called PAS, Poverty and Social Safety Division. Or before joining this organization, I never knew that such kind of initiatives are happening in Pakistan. I'm a private sector guy, spent like good 20 years both in development sector and in corporate, primarily for USAID, European Union, LMKTI, LMKR, I don't know if you guys know about that. Lately, like a couple of years back, my wife, she happens to be a government officer as well. So one fine good, before I jump into it, this is quite a story which I really want to share. तो वो एक दिन मुझे डिस्कस कर रही थी कि there is this job there in सरकार for the director general, तो मैंने उनको कहा, I believe यहाँ पर the audience is mostly Pakistani and international students. So if you want me to keep that in English, so I can do that. Otherwise, I can blend a few languages. Right. So she shared that that newspaper clipping with me that there is position out there, so you should be applying. So मुझे याद है रात को 11 बजे sorry. So I remember that at 11:55 I pressed that submit button, to post my CV there. Or then this started a whole process of interviewing and tests. So there was a written test for this 20th grade position. And eventually I was, out of the luck, I was being selected. Not believing that शायद इस तरह की transparency भी होती है. And when they offered me that salary, the 20th grade salary, which was 4 times lesser than what I was doing. I was working for USAID Chemonics, if you know Chemonics. So I used to be their deputy chief of party. वो इतने कम पैसे थे, मैंने कहा बेगम इसमें तुम्हारा जो है ना मेकअप शेकअप का ही गुजारा होना है. So, but then I met my secretary then, Yusuf Khan Saab, and a very prestigious name in Pakistan in social safety is Dr. Sania Nishtar. जब उनसे मैं मिला and I got to know her vision late, और मुझे पता लगा कि she happens to be a MBBS doctor and a PhD in the subject area, heart surgeon. And the way she interviewed me, believe you me, I thought probably she is some data scientist. So that was the passion and that was the feel कि I thought कि let's give it a try. Let's see what difference I can make as far as the social safety net is concerned in Pakistan. So, as I was being told by Dr. Clark Saab, I'll be sharing few of the glimpse that what BISP is doing. And since I belong to the technology department, I'll be sharing that how we have tried to make that program a little transparent. Then we have been ranked global number 2 by World Bank and ADB when it comes to the number of beneficiaries we are serving and the amount. So just to give you a glimpse of the budget we are holding, we are the second largest budget of this country after Army. So that much amount of money, since this is a public statement that we spend 360 billion plus rupees every year when it comes to the serving the beneficiaries in different status. We have different programs, but for all of those programs there are some basic rules which somebody has to fulfill to become my beneficiary, right? So I'll try to explain few of the things, not getting into very technical details, but let's keep it very interactive. Wherever you feel like that you need to ask me any question. For this presentation I have selected these 4 major things. I'll be telling you about BISP, a few of the achievements, then what are the core initiatives we are executing, और आगे हमारा way forward क्या है. I don't know, it's a little blurry, so I'll be explaining most of the stuff. So this is about थोड़ा सा पाकिस्तान का portfolio that where actually we stand miserably at very low state, right? So इस पूरी slide का मतलब ये है 43 नंबर पे हम index करते हैं when it comes to the poverty risks, and then as per the MPI index जिसमें education, health and living expenses शामिल हैं, वहाँ पर हम 24th नंबर पे रैंक करते हैं. This is out of this is from 0 to 24, right? So 0 means the poorest, so not a very good shape. Next चलते हैं. So BISP, we came into being like back in 2008 under Act of Parliament, और हमारा objective ये था that we are being constituted to support the poorest of the poor in this country. उसकी capacity building करनी है, a straight line of income को हमने ensure करना है, and we have to disperse an equal amount of money among them so that उनकी livelihood को support किया जा सके. So mind you that BISP never means कि हम आप लोगों को means the beneficiaries को हम hand holding करेंगे और उनको कोई स्किल सिखाएंगे, क्योंकि नॉर्मली ये परसेप्शन ज़हन में आता है. तो हम सिर्फ उनको उतने पैसे देते हैं. सो द करंट अमाउंट ऑफ दिस सपोर्ट इज़ 14,000 रुपीज़ एवरी 6 months. सो दैट मीन्स अराउंड कितने 1200-1300 रुपये अ मंथ, जिसमें शायद 10 किलो आटा बड़ा मुश्किल आता होगा. सो ये वो अमाउंट है जिसमें शायद हम सिर्फ लाइवलीहुड को सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं. आई एम नॉट अ फील्ड गाय, बट during the last couple of years spent with BISP, I got this chance to go out in the field, and believe you me, beneficiaries ने 14,000 रुपये मिलने का 6 महीने का प्लान बनाया होता है, which actually you guys may spent on a dinner in a fancy restaurants. तो वहाँ पर उन्होंने 14,000 रुपये से पूरे 6 महीने का प्लानिंग किया होता है कि हम इसको कैसे स्पेंड करेंगे. एंड फॉर देम बिफोर ज्वाइनिंग दिस प्रॉब्ली आई थॉट यार हम लोगों को गरीब बना रहे हैं, हम लोगों को और फ़कीर बनाने का प्लान कर रहे हैं. बट बिलीव यू मी, इफ़ दिस लाइन support line for the lab is not available, I don't know what chaos is going to happen. And of course the credit goes to the decision makers, जहाँ उन्होंने particularly अगर आपने इस मुल्क में chaos को feel नहीं किया during the COVID days, which I don't want to get into a political discussion, but मेरा ख्याल है we are feeling that heat these days now, right? There's no COVID thing, there's this flood thing, और उस flood ने I totally get that कि उसने बहुत बड़ा damage किया है, and we are there to support that part of the segment as well. But वो जो chaos, I don't know, आप अपने घरों में अपनी घर में काम करने वाली मासी, आया, driver and the other people on the road, if you are saying, and how people are attempting those suicidal attacks when it comes to their individual lives. This is very, very unfortunate. سو مجھے لگتا ہے کہ اس طرح کے پروگرامس نے لوگوں کو ایٹ لیسٹ اپنی دہلیز کے اندر رکھا ہے. ڈونٹ کم آؤٹ, ایٹ لیسٹ گورنمنٹ از ٹرائنگ ٹو سپورٹ. آئی نو دس از ناٹ انف, بٹ دس از دا میکس پور کنٹری لائک پاکستان کین ڈو. سو اس کو اپریشیٹ شاید کرنا پڑتا. یہ امپورٹنٹ سلائڈ ہے, اس کے اوپر تھوڑا سا ٹائم لوں گا. سو ہاؤ ڈو وی ڈیفائن دیٹ سم بڈی از غریب اور سم بڈی از مائی بینیفیشری, رائٹ؟ دیٹ از ویری ویری امپورٹنٹ. اور چونکہ آپ کا اور باقی بہت سارے لوگوں کا دیا ہوا پیسہ, ٹیکس پیئرز منی جو ہے وہ اس میں انوالو ہے, اس میں جاتا ہے. تو دیر آئی ریئلی وانٹ ٹو میک یو فیل کانفیڈنٹ کہ ہاؤ اینی بڈی از بینگ آئیڈینٹیفائڈ دیٹ. سو اس کا نام ہے NSCR, نیشنل سوشو اکنامک رجسٹری. اینڈ سوری نہیں میرے بارے میں بات نہیں ہو رہی. سو NSCR از نیشنل سوشو اکنامک رجسٹری. So mind you, I am the largest database in Pakistan. So when I say the largest, تو آپ کہیں گے جی وہ تو نادرا ہے. So Nadra knows about you and me 16 variables. ٹھیک ہے, آپ کا نام, فادر کا نام, مے بی ایڈریس, شناختی علامت, and few other variables. Whereas I know 67 variables about every individual in Pakistan. اور میرے پاس 190 ملین لوگوں کا ڈیٹا ہے, 190 ملین لوگوں کا ڈیٹا میرے پاس ہے. دیٹ سروے وی کنڈکٹیڈ فرام ایئر 2017 ٹو 2020. دسمبر میں کنکلوڈ ہوا, 2021 دسمبر. اور اس میں وی وینٹ, اٹ واز اے گراس روٹ لیول سروے, اور ہم ڈور ٹو ڈور گئے. سو مجھے اب یہ پتہ ہے کہ محمد حنیف فیصل آباد, چک بیگا, فلام کے کس یونین میں, کس ڈسٹرکٹ کے کس حصے میں, کون سے گھر میں کہاں رہتا ہے. سو دیٹ از جیو ٹیگ اسپیشل, جیو اسپیشل ڈیٹا ہے. مینس اس کے گھر کی میرے پاس پن لوکیشن بھی اویلیبل ہے. اور اس ڈیٹا کی ایکوریسی ایز بین ٹیسٹڈ بائی تھرڈ پارٹی گائز 99% ہے. سو اٹ از دیٹ ایکوریٹ ڈیٹا. اور ناؤ وی ہیو کنورٹیڈ دیٹ ڈیٹا بیس انٹو اے ڈائنامک ڈیٹا بیس, کیونکہ جس بندے نے 2017 میں سروے کروایا تھا اینڈ سروے کمپلیٹ ہوتے ہوتے 5 سال لگے, ناؤ دیٹ انفارمیشن از ایکچولی آبسلیٹ, وہ بھی 5 سال پرانی ہو چکی ہے. تو اس کے اوپر ہم نے ایک نیا ایک ماڈیول آپٹ کیا ہے جس میں دے کین اپڈیٹ دا ڈیٹا. سو ان دیٹ کانٹیکسٹ میرے پاس اپڈیٹڈ انفارمیشن پڑی ہوتی ہے. بہت سارے لوگ شاید یہ کہیں گے جی ہمارے گھر کا تو سروے نہیں ہوا اور ہمارے پاس وہ آئے بھی نہیں گئے. سو اس ہال میں بیٹھے ہوئے تقریباً 99% لوگ, 0.9% لوگ ایسے ہیں جن کو شاید سروے کی ضرورت نہیں تھی, رائٹ؟ تو مینس دی سیگمنٹ وچ وی کالڈ B minus A minus A plus, ان کا سروے ڈیفینیٹلی میں نہیں کروں گا, رائٹ؟ دوسرا سو اس سروے کو جب ہم کلیکٹ کرتے ہیں, جب ڈیٹا کلیکٹ ہوتا ہے میرے پاس, سو وی رن اے اسمال فارمولا آن ٹاپ آف دیٹ ڈیٹا وچ از کالڈ PMT. سو دنیا میں دیر آر 2 or 3 different standards. One is called MEX, other one is called PMT, and third another one. So یہ جو PMT فارمولا ہے یہ ان 67 ویریبلس پہ کیومولیٹ ہوتا ہے, اینڈ دین اٹ ڈیسائڈس کہ اس گھرانے کا اسکور کیا ہے فرام 0 to 100. 0 means the poorest, 100 means the richest. اور جب یہ ہم سروے کرتے ہیں تو وی ایکچولی ڈونٹ نوٹ وٹ وی سی, وی اونلی نوٹ وٹ وی ہیو بین ٹولڈ. سو اف مائی انومیٹر گوز آؤٹ دیئر اور وہ وہاں پر جا کے دیکھتا ہے کہ اس گھر میں 2 بائکس کھڑے ہیں, دیر آر 2 واش رومس, دیر آر 3 bedrooms اینڈ آل دیٹ, ہم وہ نوٹ نہیں کرتے ہیں. ہم وہ نوٹ کرتے ہیں جو کہ اس گھر کا مالک ہمیں بتاتا ہے کہ اس کے پاس کیا ہے. پیپل تھنک دیٹ دس از این ایسٹ بیسڈ سروے, جتنا کم بتاؤں گا اتنا زیادہ میرا اسکور نیچے آئے گا. اٹس ناٹ دیٹ کیس. یہ لائبلٹی بیسڈ ہے. سو سمبڈی, اس کی ایگزامپل میں ایسے دیتا ہوں کہ ان اے ہاؤس دیر از اے 50,000 انکم فار ایگزامپل, اور وہاں پہ 10 لوگ رہتے ہیں, اور ایک وہ گھر ہے جہاں پہ 2 لوگ رہتے ہیں اور 25,000 روپے کی انکم ہے. سو جو 50,000 والی انکم ہے نا وہ غریب ہے, رائٹ؟ بیکاز لائبلٹی وہاں پر, اسی طرح اگر وہاں پہ کوئی ڈسیبل آ گیا تو لائبلٹی وہاں پہ بڑھ گئی ہے. سو ویری انٹیلیجنٹ سروے, اور اس پہ ہم کوشش کرتے ہیں, نتھنگ از پرفیکٹ, بٹ یا وی ٹرائی آور بیسٹ کہ اس کے اندر سے ہم. سو آج کل جو تھریش ہولڈ چل رہا ہے دیٹ از 32. سو جس کا بھی اسکور 32 سے ابھی نیچے ہے اس کو ہم غربت کی ڈیفینیشن میں فال ان کرواتے ہیں, اور پھر اس کے لیے بہت سارے پروگرامس. ان میں سے جو پہلا پروگرام ہے وچ از نمبر 2 از کالڈ کفالت. یہ وہ پروگرام ہے جو آئی واز ٹاکنگ اباؤٹ دیٹ 14,000 روپیز پر 6 months, twice a year. جو اس کے لیے کوالیفائی کرتا ہے اس کے لیے آگے 2 اور پروگرامز ہیں. سو دے آر کالڈ کنڈیشنل کیش ٹرانسفرز. کفالت از کالڈ unconditional cash transfer, no condition. It's just that your score has to be less than 32, right? اور اس کے بعد جو کنڈیشنز لگتی ہیں اس پہ وہ کنڈیشن یہ ہے کہ اگر آپ اسی 32 کی بریکٹ میں فال ان کرتے ہیں اینڈ اف یو ہیو کڈس اینڈ دے گو ٹو اسکول یو فال ان another program which is called تعلیمی وظائف, our education program. So we pay the stipend and the school fee for those kids جو کہ اس اسکول میں جا رہے ہوتے ہیں. اور اسی فیملی میں اف دیر از اینٹی نیٹل اینڈ پوسٹ نیٹل فیمیلس تو ان کے لیے بھی جو گرلس ہیں بچے ہیں ان کے لیے زیادہ اسٹائپینڈ ہے, جو بوائز ہیں ان کے لیے تھوڑا کم ہے. اینڈ دس از آل بیکاز کہ ویمن کی جو تعلیم ہے تعلیمی وظائف میں اس کو بھی انکریج کیا جائے, وہ زیادہ سے زیادہ لوگ اسکول میں جائیں اور ان کے ساتھ ڈفرینٹ بونسز بھی اٹیچڈ ہیں, اور بچوں کی ہیلتھ کے لیے بھی ایک پروگرام ہے. دین نمبر 5 وی ہیو این انڈر گریڈ اسکالرشپ پروگرام فار آئی بلیو دیٹ انٹرنیشنل اسلامی یونیورسٹی از آلسو گیٹنگ بینیفٹ آؤٹ آف اٹ. وہ بچے جو کہ ایک خاص غربت کے لیول سے نیچے ہیں, ان کی ماہانہ انکم پروبیبلی 45,000 مائنس ہے, دے کین اپلائی فار دا پروگرام, اور ان کی پورے سال کی فی اور 40,000 روپیز تک کا اسٹائپنڈ وی آفر. اور اگلے کوارٹر سے دیٹ از گوئنگ ٹو بی 60,000 روپیز پر 6 months plus the whole fee of your all 4 years program. Last but not the least, it's the emergency cash responsiveness. Probably we are the only tool in Pakistan which can respond in terms of livelihood support when there is any calamity in جیسے کہ فلڈ ہے یا اس طرح کی اور چیزیں, تو اس کے اندر ہم سپورٹ کرتے ہیں. وی ہیو دیٹ ٹول. پورے پاکستان میں جب بھی کوئی پیسہ ڈسپرس کرنا ہے وی ہیو دیٹ کنیکٹیوٹی ود آل دا بینکس, ود نادرا, ود آل دی ٹولز اویلیبل جو کہ ویریفائیبل انفارمیشن کو آگے جا سکتے ہیں. سو دیز آر دا 6 پروگرامس جو کہ بس کور چلاتا ہے, اور مجھے کہا گیا جلدی کرو, سو ہم اس کو آگے چلاتے ہیں, اس کو بھی آگے چلاتے ہیں, اور کوئکلی میں آپ کے ساتھ شیئر کر سکتا ہوں. اف یو ہیو اینی کویشچنس پلیز ڈو میک می اسٹاپ وین ایور یو فیل لائک, ادروائز میں جلدی سے جمپ کرتا ہوں ٹیکنالوجیکل ریفارمس کے اوپر, جہاں پر شاید میں یہ بتانا چاہوں گا کہ ان پروگرامس کو چلانے کے لیے اس کے پیچھے انفراسٹرکچر کیا امپلیمنٹ ہوا ہے. سو پلیز نیکسٹ کرتے جائیے. نیکسٹ چلتے ہیں. یہ جو سروے ہے یہ ہمارا سارا ٹیکنالوجی بیسڈ سروے ہے, مینس دس از آل کیپی بیسڈ. جو بندہ جہاں جا کے جو نوٹ کرتا ہے وہ ہمیں جیو ٹیگ پہ ریئل ٹائم انفارمیشن ملتی ہے. نیکسٹ یہ پی ایم ٹی فارمولا میں نے آپ کو بتا دیا کہ وہ کیسے ایگزیکیوٹ ہوتا ہے, اس میں کیا اسٹیپس انوالوڈ ہیں. آگے چلتے جائیے. ایک کفالت پروگرام آئی ہیو آلریڈی شیئرڈ ود یو دیٹ وٹ کفالت از آل اباؤٹ. ایز آف ٹوڈے ہم 8.3 ملین لوگوں کو یہ 14,000 روپے پر 6 months پے آف کرتے ہیں. تعلیمی وظائف میں 8.6 ملین بچے جو کہ اسکول پہلے نہیں جاتے تھے اب جاتے ہیں. شاید آئی ڈونٹ نو یونیسیف نے آپ ساتھ شیئر کیا ہوگا, ابھی بھی تقریباً 2 کروڑ ایسے اور بچے ہیں جو کہ آؤٹ آف اسکول ہیں. اس سال ہمارا پلان یہ ہے کہ ایٹ لیسٹ 10 ملین بچے اس پروگرام کے اندر آ جائیں جو کہ اسکول جانا شروع کر دیں. نیکسٹ اور یہ تھوڑی ڈیریویشن یہ ہے کہ لڑکیوں کو ہمیشہ سے ہم زیادہ پیسے دیتے ہیں. وی ایکچولی وانٹ ٹو امپاور گرلس ٹو ناٹ اونلی اٹینڈ اسکول بٹ آلسو دا یونیورسٹیز. نیکسٹ چلیں آگے. پھر ایک نشو و نما کے پروگرام میں آلریڈی آپ سے ڈسکس کر لیا کہ جو اینٹی نیٹل اور پوسٹ نیٹل کے جو ایشوز ہیں ان کو ایڈریس کرنے کے لیے ایز آف ٹوڈے وی ہیو 150,000 فیملیز انڈر دس پروگرام, اور یہ اس کا ٹارگیٹ 500,000 کا ہے دس ایئر کا. نیکسٹ یہ میں نے آپ سے ڈسکس کیا کہ جو ایچ ای سی کا پروگرام ہے 92,000 اسٹوڈنٹس کو اس سال ہم سپورٹ کر رہے ہیں. نیکسٹ ایئر میں 10,000 بچے اور ہم اس میں ایڈ اپ کرنا چاہیے. ایمرجنسی کیش میں ہم نے جیسے میں نے شروع میں آپ سے شیئر کیا تھا کہ کووڈ کے دنوں میں تیرا میں بلوچستان میں آئے ہوئے زلزلے میں اور موسٹ ریسنٹلی دی فلڈ, ان ساری چیزوں میں آپ نے گورنمنٹ کے روزانہ آپ تقریریں سنتے ہیں کہ بی آئی ایس پی نے اتنے پیسے دے دیے, تو وہ اسی ہینڈل کے تھرو ڈسپرس ہو رہے ہیں سارے پیسے. نیکسٹ آلرائٹ. تو کچھ جو چھوٹی موٹی ٹرانسپیرنسی ہے پچھلی سلائڈ پہ, یہ میں آپ سے ضرور 2 منٹ میں شیئر کرنا چاہوں گا. 2 منٹ. ایک تو یہ کہ جو پیمنٹ جنریشن سسٹم ہے آئی بینگ دی ڈیجی ٹیکنالوجی, ہم نے کیا کیا ہے اس میں. सो सबसे पहला काम ये किया, आप ये कहेंगे जी ये फ़लाँ पर्ची आई है, ये शनाख्ती कार्ड नंबर है, काइंडली मेक हिम और हर द बेनिफिशरी ऑफ द प्रोग्राम। ये डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी भी नहीं कर सकता। सो इफ़ समबडी कम्स टू यू और आके ये कहता है कि जी ये फ़लाँ जो है ना स्टेट्समैन आया हमारे पास, उसने आके मैं कहा कितने बंदे अंदर डाल दो, तो ये नहीं हो सकता। तो ये ट्रांसपेरेंसी हमने ना उसमें इंश्योर कर ली है। वो कैसे की है, दैट द होल ऑफ द डेटा इज़ इनक्रिप्टेड, राइट। और उसके अंदर मैं भी मीन्स टेक्नोलॉजी क्या है जी, इसमें यूज़र ने पासवर्ड डालो और दिखाओ कि कौन बंदा क्या इन्फॉर्मेशन वो मैं नहीं कर सकता। इफ़ आई डू दैट एवरीबडी विल गेट टू नो। आई डोंट वांट टू गो इनटू दैट डिटेल, लेकिन ब्लॉकचेन का एक कॉन्सेप्ट है विच इज़ अ डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड वेरिफिकेशन ऑफ द डेटा। तो अगर मैंने साहब की किसी भी इंफॉर्मेशन में कुछ देखा है या उसको चेंज किया है, ऑल ऑफ यू वुड गेट टू नो कि ये कुछ हुआ है, राइट। तो वो टेक्नोलॉजी हमने इसमें इम्प्लीमेंट की है। एक सर्विस है वो आप ख़ुद भी अपने फ़ोन पे इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, विच इज़ कॉल्ड 8171.bisp.gov.pk। आपके घर में कोई मासी काम करने वाली है, ड्राइवर है, कोई भी ऐसा है, प्लीज़ उसको यूज़ कीजिए। उसमें उसका शनाख्ती कार्ड नंबर डालिए, यू विल गेट टू नो कि उसका PMT स्कोर क्या है। अगर उसका सर्वे हुआ है, नहीं हुआ तो प्लीज़ उसको एडवाइस करें कि आप नियरेस्ट BISP के या नादरा के ऑफिस में जाएं और जाके अपना BISP का सर्वे कराएं। वी रियली वांट कि हम उन लोगों को हेल्प कर सकें। सेकेंडली उनको ये भी इंफॉर्मेशन मिलेगी कि आप किन किन प्रोग्राम्स के एलिजिबल हैं एंड हाउ टू गेट एनरोल्ड फॉर दैट प्रोग्राम। ये इन्फॉर्मेशन भी आपको वहाँ मिल जाएगी। थैंक यू वेरी मच, जज़ाकल्लाह।
Sir, thank you so much for your valuable information regarding BISP and IT program. And we have another guest, but she is online, Mrs. Shireen Sadozai. Let me introduce Ms. Shireen Sadozai. She is the Director of the Policy and Research, Verso Consultant, Islamabad. She is working in governance and social protection, which is our topic today. And she is designed management of electoral support system in Pakistan, and another news that she is also working for the gender-based research. And before going delay, ma'am, I request you if you can share your presentation, because there is a technical issue here, or you can speak without sharing your PPT file.
Jay, thank you so much. I've actually already shared the presentation on here on the Zoom directly with your international conference account, so it should be there. But first of all, thank you so much for inviting me here. And as we are speaking, I'm actually not in Pakistan and working on social protection, but working in a Pacific Island country which is called Kiribati. The only reason I'm saying this is that sometimes, I mean, most often internet connectivity is not an issue, but sometimes it can become an issue. So just in case there is a dropout or something, I apologize in advance, but hopefully it won't happen. So if everyone can see the presentation, I have no idea because I won't be able to see the screen, I suppose. If everyone can see it, I can just start. So the session is about rights and life cycle based social protection, and I mean, thank you so much for inviting me and giving me the topic, which is inclusive life for social protection. Of course, we know that if we go on the first slide after the title slide, we know that very quickly we recap, we're all among peers, we're here to talk about this because hopefully if something out of this, if some discussion out of this makes sense, we can take it back into our work and actually try doing the mix for Pakistan, the social protection mix for Pakistan in a manner where rights-based work and where life cycle-based, life course, individual risk evaluation while designing social protection is done more. In fact, we start at that. So just very quickly, the call for inclusive social protection obviously comes from the 2030 agenda, the most recent one, specifically the Leave No One Behind. Then we have in the goals itself, the target 1.3, the related indicators and all. And before that, it obviously builds on. Thank you so much. Now I can also see the presentation now. So you can go on the first one, and of course that builds on the social protection floors, which comes from R202 in 2012. and which is about basic income across life stages, and as children, as working age people, as old people, and of course it also talks about health. Having been through COVID and having been through, in Pakistan specifically, having been through the disaster related to climate change, we know that both these were not some ideas, they were the need. This is what is needed. This life cycle approach is what is needed. So let's quickly go to the next slide and see what exactly is this life cycle approach. Again, I'm not going into details because we all know that basically the perspective is that we have to take into account whatever risks they are. Okay, so what is Pakistan's social protection offer right now? Pakistan's social protection offer is not based on life cycle risks. It is based on, it used to be very social insurance heavy, but of late, if you really think about it, it's anchored into a very poverty targeted social assistance, which obviously was started with this, actually zakat, and then it became really big with this. But even within the provinces and all, similar poverty-targeted programs are the ones which are in currency and which are being taken up more and more. And even if you look at it as a spending to GDP ratio, most of the spending is on in social protection is clearly in these poverty-targeted programs. Then, by way of active labor market, we have some TVAT programs. By way of, we have a lot of fragmentations in terms of social care, which is universal by concept, but really doesn't help because it's really small and really spread across. And the latest, I think, trend that's come in is, although as such poverty, when you call somebody deserving or non-deserving as poor, that becomes charity, but really charity style, soup kitchen style initiatives are, I think, the latest to this mix. And since some of the provinces are still dealing with such programs, I think it's very much part of the mix that we have. So this is Pakistan's social protection offer, and I'd sort of try seeing how that fits into the life cycle approach in the next few slides. If we go to the next one, then I was talking about that whether we are looking through risks or not while designing our social protection programs. So if you look at, and we're probably not looking, at least I'm not seeing that slide, but just to quickly go through, when you in early childhood, you can have the risk of not having prenatal or postnatal care, and that's a risk that can stay with you in terms of chronic illness or a disability or lack of vaccination for that matter, which can stay with you throughout your life. And that's and even more so, there can be lack of nutrition, and so stunting can stay with you, and effects of stunting can stay with you, and that's a risk. Then, if we go to school-age children, there are different risks in terms of access to school. The risk of being child labor, so that you can't go to school even if you have, per se, you may have throughout the life stages, or can be at any life stage. It can be a risk. So how does then one design social protection so that it takes care of the individual risk profile? Well, as per the social protection floors, ILO social protection floors, social protection has to support you through childhood, through working age, through old age, and as you can see, things like child support, maternity, unemployment, work injury, pensions, these are some of the things that we will have to do that. If we can go to the next slide, just very quickly to remind ourselves that generally the types of social protection are tax finance, contributory, or employer finance. In Pakistan, contributory and employer finance can be one. Tax finance and employer finance can sometimes also be one, specifically in the case where your employer is actually the government, so their finance is the tax. But you can have it in terms of entitlements, you can have it in terms of social assistance, social insurance, legal obligations. We know that. Let's see how that fits into what Pakistan's. Can we have this as the full screen, please? Otherwise, you won't be able to see it. But if we can't, then we can't. What we, it's okay. So what we see as Pakistan's life cycle based social protection mix is contributory employer financed, where you have contributory employer financed social protection. For children, there is education support. For working age, there is some health insurance, injury benefit. For old age, there is pension gratuity. Tax finance entitlement as such does not exist. In some cases, it exists for public sector, civil and military jobs both. But that also is mostly it's tax finance only because your employer's finance is taxed. So I put it here, but it's a little it's not an entitlement per se. So actually, this is an empty box. But since we tend to see reports which put it like this, I've just for the moment put it here. But please think of this as an empty box as well, because what then happens is that a lot of other kinds of services and social protection programs come in where tax money is being used, and those are generally speaking stipends then for childhood. Through and through there is social care, but very sporadic, very fragmented social care. And for all three life cycles, then there are some things like poverty targeted asset transfers, and then you have what you have in lieu of tax finance entitlement in Pakistan is actually poverty targeted cash transfers, where you have CCTs, where you have obviously because you are giving it on a household basis, somewhere or the other you have people who are working age, somewhere or the other you have people who are old age. In fact, this as such does take into consideration if in a household, if the dependency ratio has more older people, it will increase the cutoff and all, or it used to. But we are very clear that it's a poverty targeted cash transfer. It's not entitlement based. I don't get this because I'm not poor. If it was an entitlement, then just being a citizen, I should have been getting the best transfer as well, theoretically speaking. Whether we have other checks to make sure a person like me doesn't get it is a different question. So we can go to the next slide. So we have to build up to entitlements. That's very clear. This was a start, but poverty targeted assistance is not enough. First and foremost, it does not take into account the individual's risk profile. Because when you talk about, even when you're talking about in terms of, yes, there is something for children which is poverty targeted, and there is something for working age which is poverty targeted, and something for old age which is poverty targeted, you're assuming that only the poor have those risks in those life stages, which is not true. At less than 1% of GDP per capita, the benefit level is too inadequate. In fact, one study shows that it doesn't even work as a top-up to fill the gap to reach the poverty line for really poor households. And this is a 2020 study. So even in terms of for us, even the COVID top-up, which was done through BIS, but there were other ways of, because what basically COVID did was that it exposed, it sort of exposed the limits of the social protection system that Pakistan had been investing in for the past 10 years, by showing that if you have covalent shocks, if you have new poor, you don't have means to reach them, so they had to develop those means. But they still went with the poverty target. That was the point to actually get rid of the poverty targeted system, but we still went with the poverty targeted system, and with the result that if 3 people in a household lost a job, we actually topped up for the household, and we actually just had, according to an OPM simulation, that accounted for only 11% of what the household actually needed, because even if we had done that little amount, it was a very small cash amount, it was 12,000 rupees for 4 months, but even if we had done that much for like at an individual level, so if 4 people have lost their job, then the risk of unemployment is not 1 for the household, it's actually 4. It's multiplied by 4 because that was their level of income at that point. Even if we had done that, simple math would tell us that you would at least need 40% or so of what the household was earning before the COVID level. And then of course there are exclusion errors. I'm very deliberately not going into too much detail of the exclusion errors simply because that will actually, I hope that you do have that somewhere in this because that would actually take another presentation to do that. But very quickly, exclusion errors simply because of the way we are doing any targeting system will have exclusion error. First of all, any social protection system may miss out some people as well. But what we know about the proxy means test, which is the one that we chose for BISP and have been using since, is that the most common regression method, which is OLS, which is used for PMT, if you use that for a fixed poverty line for up to 20% of the population, your exclusion errors are huge. And this is a paper which is widely available, which is which has authors from the institution, which is the World Bank, which actually developed this methodology. But even for BIS, we have papers and we have research where 67% to 80% exclusion errors have been noted. Okay, so yes, we can go to the next one. So that's one thing with exclusion errors and all. The other thing is, okay, let's see the poverty targeted one for what the poverty targeted one wanted to do. The poverty targeted one wanted to do consumption smoothing, but they assumed that consumption smoothing is only for the poor. You look at, and this report is from 2018, so basically it means that this doesn't take into account the cost after COVID, and I'm not even beginning to talk about the floods because nobody knows that. Nobody knows what's happened and what's going to come in terms of actual numbers there and cost. Excuse me. So if you look at it, this is the cost of diet for middle income families. It's a UNICEF report. It's called the cost of diet report. Excuse me. And you can see that the cost of an adequate diet is very, very high as a percentage of your overall income. So it doesn't matter what you're spending on non-food, what is your non-food expenditure. It's a high-space calculation that the authors have done, but it doesn't matter what that is. At around 50%, if somebody has to give just for food, that's a very high percentage. And if we really need to come to any kind of consumption smoothing, these people, this group will need to be supported by social protection as well. As you can see, all the promises have some kind of an income gap when it comes to only meeting your dietary requirements and some NFE. Generally speaking, when this happened, there was a lot of talk around things like, but why didn't it translate into a vote? Jagran will be very simply because there can be many other reasons, and I'm not going to go into the elections part of what can be the reasons, but very simply, we missed the middle income completely in this. So, who's going to convert a vote in a country is not just the poor; it's across different classes. So, having said that, there are different reasons, but I think the important part is that what the program itself started to do is miss out a basic group that also needed the same support, and that's what any poverty targeted program will do. It's by design to do that. We can go to the next one, please. Now, what are some of the life cycle risks in Pakistan? Stunting is one. It's very high, and it's likely to be higher much higher after floods, because we saw the same in 2010-11 floods as well. We know that a lot of learning outcomes are determined by whatever the home environment is, and we have very low reading habits across all wealth quintiles except for the top wealth quintile where it goes to 70% or something like that, right? Then you have 32 million youth who are not in education, employment, or training. And this is again UNICEF, these are mostly UNICEF figures. Sorry, I haven't mentioned that. And out of the freelancers in Pakistan, around 57.6% are 25 to 34 years. So that's my mistake. I'm sorry about that. 25 to 34 years of age. Basically, this means that when you're not being able to target the informal sector, you will be missing out on the youth. Care and dignity for older persons, I think SPRC's own work shows that that's related to your, unless you are earning at a very high, you have assets and earning at a very high level, there is a care and dignity deficit as per the old person report, that the first one that SPRC did. So we can go to the next one. So essentially it means that Pakistan has no offer when it comes to life cycle social protection, because there is no even basic income for early childhood, youth, working age, disability, nothing of that sort. 80% or more of the old age population is not covered by a pension because you only have it for the formal sector. Again, the workers in the informal sector are not provided with any working age benefit. And contributory schemes are also de facto poverty targeted because they have a wage ceiling which matches the minimum wage, which is not a living wage anyway. Investment in social care is ad hoc and it's not based on any needs assessment. We all know that, we all talk about that. We don't talk about reallocating or doing something with this tendency to open a new home for a new category of people that we think need it. And last but not the least, there is a misdirected over-reliance on poverty-targeted cash transfer to cover this void. It's not going to do that. If we go on to the next one, I think what we need to basically do is expand life cycle benefits, like we said, to leave no one behind. We need to have a gaps assessment of legal framework, which, to support universal old age benefit, child benefits. We need to start piloting district level schemes on entitlements and life cycle cash transfers, and with the kind of devastation the floods have brought, in any case at district level, we will have to go universal. But that, I guess, there is another presentation on that. It is time to rationalize. We need to have a comprehensive assessment of all social care services. It's quite clear that there is very little value for money, but we need to start putting those numbers and start counting and accounting for those. We can go to the next one. And finally, just like here, we need to continue the dialogue on citizen rights and entitlement on rights-based social protection. Be very clear that the moment we have the thing of you will get this because you're poor, it's not social protection, it is charity, and charity it cannot substitute for social protection, which is a right, which is an entitlement. And again, for dignity in old age, for PWDs, if we don't go with the life cycle based social protection, we are basically saying that the state is not ready to have the social contract between citizen and the state. It is just willing to do enough to sort of maintain a semblance of helping the poor, but that's under the charity paradigm. It's definitely not under the citizenship paradigm or the entitlement paradigm, which is what this session is about. because there, again, Pakistan's social protection offer just does not translate into a life cycle based social protection mix. Where I am right now, which is Kiribati, I mean, honestly, here we can start with some kind of a life cycle based and an entitlement based social protection. But where I am from and where I've done most of my work, which is Pakistan, where I belong, unfortunately, we have not even started there. And I think it is because of the overemphasis and the over-reliance on poverty-targeted cash transfer. It is a different question whether we want to continue keeping that in our social protection mix, but it is definitely not going to solve the problems where a system is ready to take care of risks which are idiosyncratic and especially risks which are covariant risks, which creates as such quote-unquote new poor, because you have no way of reaching that, and we've seen that. So for that, we need to develop a social protection system which evaluates individual risk, which is not household-based, and which is life cycle-based for individuals. And we don't have to start everything together, but if we look at our population mix, we have something like 64 million from the age of 10 to 24. And that, if that is what we want to invest in, if we want to invest before that, because if stunting is something we want to resolve, which is one of the life cycle risks, then we can start with even 0 to 5. There are many options, there are many combinations. But the thing is that for a country which has decided to spend money on social protection, not spending it on life cycle based social protection is a missed opportunity, to say the least. I'll stop here because I'm sure there will be other colleagues who will be talking about the same things, and I wish to learn and from them as well. So thank you once again, everyone, and congratulations also on the maiden conference.
Ji ma'am, thank you so much for having a valuable information on life cycle based social protection, which is one of the important, and I hope so Mir Saab also listening to this discussion. So our next speaker is Dr. Stephen Keat.
Syncratic shocks, that's the shocks that we face as individuals. They can be different across the life cycle. And other type of shock is covariant shocks, very, very large shocks that affect entire communities or populations all at the same time. And social protection can build their resilience to these shocks. So the type of shocks that we might face across the life cycle, from early childhood to old age. I don't have time to go into them in detail here, but you can read them on the PowerPoint or look at them afterwards. Many of these shocks, of course, are to do with low incomes that families experience across the life cycle and can be addressed by increasing incomes, which is one of the reasons for investing in a national social protection system, to help people make families more resilient to deal with these idiosyncratic risks that they will face all the way through the life cycle. But also we have these large covariant risks at the time that Pakistan has been experiencing that again hit people right across the life cycle, but they hit everybody at the same time. It could be because of the economic downturn that countries face. It could be sort of natural and climate disasters, as you're experiencing at the moment with floods. It could be a political or conflict-related crisis that has caused ultimately a further economic crisis, or, as we had in the COVID-19, a pandemic that then creates a massive economic crisis. And social protection, an effective social protection system should be in place to be able to help you deal with all of these types of challenges with idiosyncratic and covariant. 60% of the population, while the very small group at the very top of the income distribution, they're the ones that have the highest growth. So you've had this increasing inequality over time, which is making things worse for the majority of the population, while the richest are pulling ahead more across Pakistan. Now, when people talk about the shock response of social protection systems, they'll often talk about different ways in which you can make a social protection system more shock responsive. the main 5 ways are set out in this diagram. People talk about design tweaks that you can make to existing programs, piggybacking that you can use to use the existing administrative system, for example, the social registry that you might have, vertical expansion, which is about increasing the transfer value to existing recipients, horizontal expansion, which is about expanding a current program to reach more people, or alignment, where it's about aligning an emergency response to then build perhaps a future social protection system. But I think actually when you look at this, the critical one, the countries that have the most effective shock responsive social protection systems, they are really looking at using vertical expansion. And they can use this vertical expansion of existing systems because they have extensive social protection systems already in place. Good universal life cycle systems which are reaching most households, which means that in the event of a shock, they can just increase the payments. So for example, Mongolia, which has an almost universal child benefit, under COVID-19, to get a rapid response to over 60% of households in Mongolia, they just increased the value of the child benefit by 400% over a period of time, and that was a very, very quick and rapid response that made a big difference to all families with children in Mongolia. And so you can have these very, very easy responses. To do that, you have to have a good system in place. Now, as Shireen has been talking about in Pakistan, that system doesn't exist. We don't have yet a good, comprehensive, modern life cycle system. If you were to look at the population of Pakistan, from the richest at the top to the poorest at the bottom, you have the sort of contributory pension schemes and civil service pensions for those at the top, but only about 20% of older people in total receiving a pension. At the bottom, you have the social assistance for the poor, the Benazir income support program, for example. But really, that is very much like the type of system we had in place in the UK in the 19th century, around 200 years ago. And what you then have is this missing middle of the majority of the population who don't receive anything because they're in the missing middle. And they're the ones who are struggling still to get by, and they need additional financial support. But that is not available to anybody in Pakistan at the moment. We still rely on this very old-fashioned type of system and design. Even though it has been modernized with electronic systems, it's still based on a design that goes back about 200 years. So, and even then it's not very effective. So the ISP, should we mention the exclusion areas. This is a study we did of the data a few years ago, looking at the exclusion areas in the ISP. Looking across here from the poorest on the left, the richest on the right, and members of the population in Pakistan. And if the ISP had been accurately targeted, then everybody to the left of the red line would have received the ISP. In reality, those who received it are those under the black line, and those who didn't receive it are above the black line. And I don't have more time to explain this diagram, but you can see that it actually had an exclusion area of 73%. That's 73% of those who should have been targeted by the ISP using the proximity test were not actually reached by the program. This kind of level of inaccuracy and arbitrariness is dangerous for any society, not because it's an ineffective scheme, but it seems to be really inaccurate, unfair, and arbitrary, and it will undermine trust in government and therefore undermine the social contract. And yet, building the social contract is one of the essential things that any nation-state needs to do, and I would imagine in Pakistan it's even more important after the level of shocks that you've had in the last 2 to 3 years. And it's not even a very effective system in terms of its impacts. If you were to look here, we did analysis across Asia in terms of the impacts of different social protection systems, and they have a much more effective impact on inequality, but also on poverty reduction and broader well-being. And as Shireen was showing, what countries need to move towards is building this inclusive life cycle social protection system. I'll go through this quickly with child benefits for the working age, old age pensions for everyone, disability benefits right across the life cycle to protect everybody against the kind of shocks, idiosyncratic shocks that they have, but also when a covariate shock, a massive shock comes like the floods of COVID-19, many people already received benefits, but then can have a much more effective shock response afterwards. So I'll just come to near the end. So I think the current emergency, we have to start thinking how big, how ambitious are the countries going to be in a kind of emergency, such a massive emergency that Pakistan has now with the floods following on from COVID-19. And I think for me, this is when countries have to think really, really big, getting cash out to as many people as possible, not only to protect their livelihoods, but to generate economic recovery within the countries. So what in this current emergency, what if you were to think big in Pakistan, with support from the international community as well as national resources, what if you were to give to benefit to all children 0 to 14 at perhaps 1,200 rupees a month? That would be seems a massive cost, 2.58 billion. Gives a benefit, a higher benefit, 4,700 rupees to every person with a disability, not to see that incomes increase, would be very poor because the biggest increase is getting up to like 35% increase in household consumption would be amongst the very poorest. And then at losers would be those in the top 30%. But they'd still feel as though they're part of the system because they would receive the benefits, but also would be paying more tax to finance the benefits. And this is what we would see in terms of a redistribution of some sort of wealth that would make a more equal society and tackle poverty and in Pakistan build a much stronger social contract within Pakistan, bringing everybody together with those with the broadest shoulders, paying more to benefit the majority of the population, as we find in many other countries happening in this same way, many prosperous countries. What would this make a difference in terms of the impacts on inequality? You can see here the graph that I showed before. Pakistan had very little impact. Actually, with spending 3% of GDP on universal benefits, we estimate that the reduction in inequality would be much more significant, around 14.5%, similar to what we see in Uzbekistan's reduction in inequality. This would have a massive impact on Pakistan. It would help to change society. It may not be possible to do immediately, but you could build this gradually over the next 10 years and transform Pakistan and have a strong basis. And it would be very effective for a shock response, because if you look at the coverage of who would be reached by the system, the households, if you look here from the poorest household on the left, the richest household on the right, this would reach almost every household in Pakistan. So if you had another massive crisis like you have now, you could easily switch on the taps and just increase the cash to families and give everybody support. And amongst the poorest 50%, almost every household would be reached. And you can compare this to the current system with the Benazir Income Support Program, where it's very few people are being reached at all. And of course, this isn't just about helping people, this is about investing in your economy, it's about helping drive greater economic growth. Because if you did this, you would improve the skill sets amongst children. They would do much better. You'd have a higher skilled workforce, which would help contribute to economic growth. You'd have greater investment, and individuals would feel more security because they'd be receiving regular cash benefits. They'd feel more secure, they'd take more risks, they'd be more willing to invest in income generating activities, which would also help drive economic growth. And finally, the greater spending would help you putting the cash into the economy, would grow the markets in Pakistan, would provide opportunities for entrepreneurs who can increase their own wealth by selling goods and increasing employment in Pakistan. So this could have a lot of benefits. And whilst ministries of finance think we can't afford this, you have to think about the economic growth benefits. There's it's no secret that the countries investing the most in social protection globally are the richest countries in the world. Why? In part because they're investing in large-scale social protection. High-income countries invest on average 12% of GDP, and that helps drive economic growth and get the countries to where they are. So just to finish, I've shown this slide before in Pakistan. I think Pakistan, after these two massive crises, COVID-19 and the floods, has to make a choice. You can continue, if we're thinking about buying a car, what kind of social security system do you want to buy? You can continue with the existing system, sort of buying a second-hand Lada Puri system, which, you know, it does something, gets you somewhere, but it's not very good, you're not very proud of it, it's not very effective in any means. Or you can make the fundamental shift over time and think, let's start building a Rolls-Royce inclusive social protection system in the future. We won't get there now, but if we start, we might get there in 20 or 30 years' time. And perhaps in the short term, you might be content with a Toyota inclusive social security system. Somewhere, like I explained, like 3% of GDP that you could reach within 10 to 15 years that would transform Pakistan and also drive economic growth. And in the future, with any more massive shocks, you'd be in a much better position. The population would already be in a better, much more resilient as the shock hits, but you'd be much more easily able to just transfer additional cash to give people this very rapid response. And then you do this vertical expansion, and then you would have a truly, truly shock responsive social protection system. So I'll stop there, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I hope you see that.
Thank you so much for giving and highlighting the special aspects of social protection in Pakistan. We are learning. So that was very interesting session by Dr. Stephen Kidd, and I had very keen interest to work on social protection. We always discuss with Dr. Ikhlaq Sahab we need to work on social protection as well. And because in Pakistan we have BISP or some other program, basically they are just providing the money, but social protection is different that we have learned today. But being, as we are getting closer to the end, I want to invite Mr. Haider because he has to share his research.
Thank you so much. Social protection, we being the think tank on SPRC have decided to quite evidently explore the fields of informal economy on social protection. So if we discuss on that point, we have decided to do a survey on the restaurant workers of Rawalpindi and Islamabad and their problems and the provision of social protection and social security to them. So we did a survey on the problems and issues of the restaurant workers in Rawalpindi and Islamabad in terms of the provision of social protection and social security to them. So that was an interesting field of study, and it basically reflects about the caretaking of informal economy in Pakistan by the government. So we have seen in the world around the years that countries have really taken care of their people when it comes to social protection in terms of informal economy by boosting their social protection systems, adding them in an inclusive and life course approach in a well-coordinated manner. But as far as the situation of Pakistan is concerned, it was slightly shaky about the social protection in the informal economy. So we took a survey in the restaurants of the Rawalpindi and Islamabad to check the provision of social security to the restaurant workers. It is not about the restaurant, it actually the workers who are working in the restaurant. So if we talk about how we segregate the things, we basically divided in the three tiers: upper tier restaurant, the middle tier restaurants, and the lower tier restaurants. And we have divided in Rawalpindi as the one city and Islamabad as the other city. So interestingly, when you go in the field and you take the data, we have seen that actually what a restaurant industry looks like, they have two faces. What they look like on face is a bit different what they actually behind the camera or behind the curtain they are doing. So in data collection there was a very interesting story came which actually overcomes and highlights the importance of this research and this industry. There's a very important chain of a restaurant, a cafe. I won't take name. It has a lot of branches in Rawalpindi and Islamabad. I took the data from their manager and a partner. So they said that we are running a restaurant very well. When the COVID hits and it's the time of the lockdown and we have to shut down all the restaurants, I said, what have you done for your workers on that time in the social security? they said we are giving them the security and the other, you got to say, advantages before that. But when the COVID hits, we give them the advantages for 25 days, 30 days, or 1.5 months. But after that, we quit because it's the concept of charity started burdening us. So after that, we give workers all free space that they can go anywhere, but whenever the lockdown will be lifted up, they can come back and they can join us. I said, fine enough. So, but the interesting thing happened after that. Workers went on, they survived, they lived, but after when the lockdown lifts up and the restaurant industry started again, when the workers came back, the first thing that restaurant owners did, they cancelled the contracts. Because they said, this is a burden on us. This is a legal burden. That is the point I want to basically discuss with you guys, that is the right-based approach. They feel right-based approach as a burden, and they feel the charitable approach as a good thing. Because they feel, if we do charity, we can suspend it at any time. It is on my own. If I am giving you 10 rupees, it is my will. I will give you or I will not give you. But if it is your right to take 10 rupees from me, I am obligated to give you 10 rupees at any cost. So this basically entire research went in that way. And if we talk about the other nature of their employment, there we seen we took 6 months as a benchmark of a permanent kind of employment a worker can do in a restaurant. So its a number was increasing because obviously a worker who joined the restaurant feels that the other job opportunities is quite difficult for him or her, and he continues in that certain restaurant. But as far as the education variable is concerned, that is seen that only a very, you gotta say that experienced chef is only the person who have any diploma in kind of hotel management in a restaurant. The 90% of the staff that you are dealing with is a kind of a secondary or a matriculation. So if we talk about the women, the interesting fact about the women in the restaurant industry is that their participation is very limited, very small. It's around some 2 to 3% basically, and that also used as a reception purpose majorly. The basic chunk of the workers who are dealing the restaurant, like food, like to serving the guest, they are with the men, and the women is first at the reception, then a slightly taking care of the guests whenever they are eating. So this basically reflects that what kind of a job they are taking from the women in that sector. So when it comes to their social security, they do not have any kind of state insured security. They basically totally relied on the employer. The way employer deals them, how much employers gives them, they are quite okay with it. And other restaurant, it's basically a very good restaurant and have branches both in Pindi and Islamabad. They have told that they are giving a very handsome amount in the kind of social security. They are giving paid sick leaves, they are giving maternity leaves, they are giving paternity leaves, they are giving health kind of insurance, and they are actually taking care of anything. But the point is still, they said we do not have any contracts. We are giving everything, and I think we are giving almost all those things in certain restaurants which are applicable on a contract. But we are always feared to have a contract, because if I have a contract, I am obligated to give those things to my employees. So what I feel, that we restrain ourselves from the contracts and we feel, okay, I will give you in the charity kind of the approach. So I will conclude my study rightly on this point, that if you want to have a very inclusive and life course social protection system in your country, your approach must be right-based. There is not and cannot any other option to take up your country and make your social protection system comprehensive, well-coordinated and well affordable if your social protection mechanism is not right-based. You can live 100 years on the charitable approach, but you cannot make your social protection system well-equipped. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. Dear participants, today we have another guest, Dr. Alia Hashmi Khan. She is CEO SPRC, and she's also the former Dean of Qaid-e-Azam University. Basically, she's a labor economist, and it is honor for us that she has been working with the Prime Minister Economic Advisor.
National Islamic University Department of Sociology for organizing this very timely and valuable conference, I would say, because it has covered all aspects of the life cycle approach to social protection since the morning. And now, last but not least, the presentation on restaurant workers, which is based on a survey, a small sample survey conducted by SPRC, reveals that the formal versus informal economy distinction and its implications for social protection. And now I lost connectivity for a while, so I don't know how much of the different tiers of restaurants that have been covered in the survey were discussed or highlighted by Heather, the presenter. But it is important to note that the informal economy has different shades, and the workers working in the informal economy are also of different categories, as you might have noticed from the presentation. So what I'm going to try to do in my limited time is to point towards certain challenges that exist for this transition of medical benefits. In the morning, the students also who are sitting here heard the Sehat Sahulat presentation, and it is not to say that none of the informal economy workers are recipients of the Sehat card, but remember that the Sehat card only extends benefits of indoor hospitalization, and whereas the social security medical benefits are which the formal economy workers enjoy, they cover the outdoor medical expenditures also, and not only of the worker but of the dependent. So this is what I meant, that we have to now review the Sehat Sahulat program and the social security program as legislated in Pakistan to arrive at a mix and a hybrid system which would cover the informal economy workers, because the system that applies to the formal economy workers cannot be transplanted directly on the for the informal economy workers. One, because it's a huge pool of informal economy workers, and there are many classes of informal economy workers, even the self-employed. Like, for example, the SPRC restaurant workers study also looks at the lower tier restaurants, which would probably be the wayside hotels for truck drivers or for other transport related workers. They are on the roadside mostly, and the self-employed people who run those low-tier restaurants, they also do not get any sort of coverage which a very micro enterprise should get from the state, so that they are enabled to take care of the social and contribute to the social protection system. Because Pakistan, as you know, is a highly indebted country, and we are not going to be able to provide state-financed, tax-financed, non-contributory benefits to this huge pool of informal economy workers. So a mix or a blend of contributions and state financing would have to be used to build the design of this informal economy workers' social protection system. Also, social protection and its linkages with productivity of the workers should be highlighted in this context, because there are labor market programs which are also part of the whole social security and social protection system for the working age people. And as you know, that there are many risks involved in, especially in the low tier restaurants, which do not, which have been highlighted by this survey. And the more that I sort of acknowledge the worth of this survey, the better it is, because I think it is a path-breaking survey, in the sense that you have to begin small in order to focus on a certain sector, which is the restaurant sector in this case, and a certain group of workers, break it up and look at the differences amongst the workers, and see that who needs what. So a needs analysis of a very, very rudimentary sort has been carried out. And I don't know how much time I can take. It is, we are running 1 hour late, I think, but I'm very, very glad that I got a chance to review this study, and I encourage SPRC to branch out into covering the social security system developments for the informal economy, because at present I was previously engaged with an initiative, but it has somewhat stalled for the moment, and till the government does not come actively and start working on this, I think SPRC is really the only institution that is devoting its energies in this field and looking at the whole life cycle approach. So I hope this also creates, today's conference has also created a motivation in the minds of the students who are sitting here to study the subject of social protection. And taking this opportunity, I would also encourage the faculty of the sociology department at Islamic University to incorporate some of the modules on social protection. This conference and the report of this conference would provide a very, very good starting place for doing so, to build all these topics into the academic curriculum of the sociology department, and you could become one of the pioneers for doing that, and trailblazers. So with these remarks, I again thank especially Dr. Razia Safdar, who accommodated me online, and who has really been a beacon for the young researchers of SPRC, to provide them motivation to conduct different path-breaking researches, and I wish SPRC a lot of success, and of course all my energies and whatever stamina I have is available to assist the young researchers and guide and mentor them at SPRC also. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. And the Department of Sociology is very much interested to expand the relationship with other organizations, and we will definitely try to work on the modules. So for concluding this session, I would like to invite Dr. Rabia Gul from Department of Sociology, Female Campus.
Respected panelist, Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, Professor Dr. Zafar, guests, faculty members, students, Assalamu alaikum. If you can hear me. I know that everybody is tired. I can see it on your faces, and I also badly need some coffee or tea. So I'm not going to take much of your time at all. But I would really like to connect back to what our Dean said in the morning about what social protection is. And when we walked into this hall this morning, you and me and many of us here, we had very limited understanding of what is social protection, and most of us were probably thinking of it just in terms of cash transfer, or what organizations such as BIS or ESAS and others are doing in Pakistan, and I guess that was it. But I think this conference was very informative, and it educated us personally. It educated me a lot, and we got to learn a lot about so many other actors which are engaged when we try to think of social protection in a more broader and more holistic way. So Dr. Suhail encouraged us to think of it, and he also raised some important questions in terms of thinking of social protection in terms of equity or cash, or there are so many other ways there could possibly be. And some of the opening sessions as well as the first technical session, through those sessions we got to learn about many actors which could be possibly engaged, such as girls, old age care. We got to learn about nutrition. We got to learn a lot about Sihat Card, which was quite informative session as well. And through some of these we also got to know what the government is doing in terms of providing social protection to us in different ways. And we also came to know about child poverty, and in this particular technical session which we just attended, Mr. Mir educated us about what BISP is doing in this regard. And then we had Ms. Shireen, who spoke about inclusive social protection, and she especially spoke about social assistance, social care, charity, and she spoke about the significance of life cycle based social protection, and she also discussed some of the risks which were associated with this as well. Then we also had Dr. Stefan, who spoke about shock response to social protection and what it should look like, especially in Pakistan. And this discussion again is very timely and very important, especially when we are going through this period of flooding in the country, and we have also experienced COVID lately, so, and the aftermath of what we are facing is also very relevant to what Dr. Stefan spoke about in his presentation. And we also had very interesting findings from Heather, and then we also got comments from Dr. Alia about, and then I think some of the points which Dr. Alia raised about how we can holistically think about social protection and how we can continue to research on it as sociologists, as researchers, is also very, very important. I think with this I would conclude this session, and our rector is also here. I welcome Professor Dr. Masoom Zai, Director of the International Islamic University. Once again, I would like to welcome Professor Dr. Masoom for joining this session, this conference. He is the rector of the International Islamic University, and we are very glad that he has been able to join us in this conference. Sir, I just provided a very brief conclusion of what we went through in this conference. So it was a very informative, very educative, conference for us, for the students. And in the morning when we started this conference, Professor Dr. Zafar, our dean, raised this question that we had a very limited understanding of social protection just in terms of cash, or what perhaps BISP and ESAS are doing. But then through this session, through this conference, we had two technical sessions, and we had an opening session, and we had very informative keynote speeches as well as papers which were presented by different speakers in this conference, and they were very, very informative. And the last comments which were made by Dr. Alia were that she suggested that we should think of including some of the findings of this conference in our own modules, perhaps in terms of rethinking about our courses, our curriculum, and I think also in terms of what we can, as sociologists, what we can think about, the kind of researches which we can do in future, because honestly, we had not thought about social protection through this lens previously. So I think it was very informative for us in the Department of Sociology for the faculty as well. So with that, I think I would like to invite you to please come up on the stage, sir. And yes, and perhaps because our students are very tired, they've been sitting here for the whole day, so I think it will be best if we conclude. Thank you, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala khatamil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Dr. Saab, DG Saab, my dean, my faculty members, ladies and gentlemen, students, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. To be honest, this social protection is not new for me. I came to know about the social protection when at a very young age, at the age of 21, I went to England for PhD. So when I landed over there, my first baby was born there in England, and the kind of protection that child who was born on their land, the kind of protection that my baby was getting, उसने मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा impress किया. But then I noted something जिसने मुझे मायूस भी किया. मैं वहाँ पे एक जो इस्लामिक सेंटर था अपने मुल्क के किसी उससे मिला, तो मैंने कहा कि क्या करते हो? कह रहा था कि कुछ नहीं करता. और मैंने कहा कि फैमिली, कहते हैं हाँ फैमिली है लेकिन जॉब मेरी नहीं है. तो मैंने कहा कि अगर जॉब नहीं है तो फिर अब एट दैट टाइम, एट दैट एज, you don't know about that society, you don't know about the people, you don't know about the government and the protection system. So I asked him, तो फिर गुजारा कैसे होता है? कहते कि ये पाकिस्तान तो नहीं है, ये तो इंग्लैंड है, यहाँ पर तो हमें अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट जो प्रोटेक्शन है वो अवेलेबल है यहाँ पे. अगर मैं काम नहीं करता तो मुझे हफ्ते के वो 80 पाउंड्स थे कि कितने उस ज़माने में, वो कह रहा था कि वो मुझे मिलते हैं, तो उससे मेरी और फैमिली का जो गुजारा है वो हो जाता है. बट देन वन डे आई आस्क्ड, हमारे वहाँ पे जो लैब थी मेरी, उस लैब में a lady would come. She was about 65 years old. Early in the morning she would come before us, यानी हमारे वहाँ पे पहुँचने से पहले she would do all the cleaning. हम लैब को एक ब्यूटीफुल उसमें वो करके, एक दिन मैंने वैसे उससे पूछा, मैंने कहा कि इस एज में आप इतनी मेहनत क्यों करती हो? आपके मुल्क के अंदर तो ये जो प्रोटेक्शन है, उस प्रोटेक्शन का आप फ़ायदा क्यों नहीं वो उठाती? तो उसने एक अजीब बात कही. तो उसने कहा कि why should I become dependent on that unemployment protection? तो मैंने कहा यार वो मेरे मुल्क के यार तो सारे इसी के ऊपर पल रहे हैं, तुझे क्या हो गया है जो 65 साल की उम्र में तू इस तरह वो करती है? तो दिस इज़ इन फैक्ट हर कोई ये चाहेगा, हर मुल्क ये चाहेगा, हर सोसाइटी ये चाहेगी कि वहाँ पर वो प्रोटेक्शन हो. अब यहाँ पे दो जो वो हैं, अगर आप देख लें, यानी प्रोटेक्शन हमारा जो दीन है वो भी इसमें एक बहुत बड़ा रोल है, सोसाइटी के अंदर इसका बहुत बड़ा रोल है. अब जैसे ये जो जैसे कैटास्ट्रफी हमारे ऊपर ये आई है, आधा मुल्क जो है वो फ्लड्स के उसमें जद में आया हुआ है और सिंध की तो बुरी हालत है. तो ऐसे में क्या होना चाहिए? अगर प्रोटेक्शन ना हो तो आप फिर इमेजिन कर लें, आप लोग सोशियोलॉजिस्ट हो, अगर किसी तरह से कोई प्रोटेक्शन ना हो तो फिर आपके माशरे के अंदर ये जो पावर्टी है वो किस लेवल तक पहुंच जाएगी? अगर पावर्टी एलिविएशन का कोई प्रोग्राम नहीं होगा तो फिर सोसाइटी के अंदर कितनी ज़्यादा जो बुराइयां हैं वो जन्म लेंगी, उसको हम किस तरह पे टैकल करेंगे? तो प्रोटेक्शन हमारा दीन, यानी मेरे ऊपर फ़र्ज़ कर लें, वो ये लाजिम करार देता है कि तूने सोसाइटी में जो गरीब है, जो नादार हैं, उनकी मेरे ऊपर एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है उसकी, मेरे दीन की, कि मैंने उनकी मदद करनी है. अच्छा, एक तो मेरा दीन ये करता है, लेकिन मुश्किल ये है कि ہمارے اور دین کے درمیان بھی ایک بہت بڑی خلیج آ چکی ہے اور ہم جو ہیں وہ اس سے اتنے بلد نہیں ہیں. اور دوسری طرف اگر گورنمنٹ کی طرف وہ دیکھا جائے تو گورنمنٹ کی بھی حالت مجھے اس طرح نہیں لگتی کہ وہ ایسے ملک جیسے پاکستان ہے کہ جہاں پہ پاورٹی ریٹ جو ہے وہ یعنی بلو ایوریج جو لائن کے جو زندگی گزار رہے ہیں ان کی تعداد بھی بہت زیادہ ہے. اور پھر جب آپ کی اپنی جو اکنامک ہیلتھ جو ہے وہ اگر اچھی نہیں ہے تو پھر آپ کیا کرو گے؟ اس طرح اس میں کیا کرنا چاہیے؟ کس طرح یہ جو معاشرہ ہے وہ سروائیو کرے، یا سوسائٹی میں کس کو کس طرح کی رسپانسبلٹی جو ہے وہ بیئر کرنی ہوگی. تو یہ بہت زیادہ وہ امپورٹنٹ ہے میں یہ سمجھتا ہوں. اور آپ لوگ جو بات کرتے ہو پروٹیکشن اکراس دا لائف کورس، اب یہ ہے کہ ایک چائلڈ کی تو میں نے آپ کو کہانی سنا دی. ایک چائلڈ ہے، پھر اس کے بعد ویمن ہے، اس کے بعد ابھی تو خیر یہ بھی پاکستان میں یہ بھی دمادم مست کلندر آ گیا ہے کہ ویمن مین. اب تو ایک اپلیکیشن کی مار ہے کہ میرے احساسات جو ہیں ابھی وہ اس کی طرح ہے. میرا جو چھوٹا بھائی ہے بہت زیادہ وہ ہے جولی قسم کا ہے. ہماری 8 بہنیں ہیں، ہم 8 بھائی ہیں اور 8 بہنیں ہیں وہاں پہ بلوچستان میں. مجھے کہتا ہے، اس نے فون کیا تو کہتا ہے کہ آپ لوگوں کی طرف سے یہ نئے قوانین آ رہے ہیں، یہ ابھی تو ہم نے اپنی جائیداد ساری ہم نے تقسیم کر لی ہے، اگر بہنوں میں سے کسی نے اپلیکیشن دے دیا کہ بابا میرے احساسات جو ہیں وہ مردوں والے ہیں تو پھر کیا ہوگا؟ اس کو تو ہم نے آدھا حصہ دیا ہوا ہے، پھر تو وہ پورا حصہ مانگے گی تو کیسے وہ ہوگا؟ تو اب یہ جو ہے یہ بھی سلسلہ جو ہے یہ چلتا آ رہا ہے. تو چلڈرن ایجڈ اور پھر یہ کہ بیمار معاشرے کے اندر ان کو کس طرح سے آپ نے پروٹیکشن دینی ہے. سو اکراس دا لائف کورس اگر کسی سوسائٹی کے اندر ہوں تو یہ بہت ہی میں سمجھتا ہوں. اور پھر ہم اگر ایس ڈی جیز کو دیکھ لیں، آپ ایس ڈی جیز میں اگر 1 کی نو پاورٹی، یعنی وہ اس حد تک آپ کی سوسائٹی کو یعنی آپ ایسے اقدامات اٹھائیں کہ there should be no poverty in the society. اسی طرح SDG 2 zero hunger, SDG 8 decent work and economic growth. اب اس میں رسپانسبلٹی ہمارے اوپر آتی ہے. We as institutions, کاش we could have done that, کہ we could have made our institutions relevant to the needs of the society. کاش ہم یہ کرتے، کاش میری یونیورسٹیز کے اندر ہونے والی ریسرچ جو ہے وہ اس لیول کی ہوتی، اتنی ریلیونٹ ہوتی کہ آئی واز ایبل ٹو پروڈیوس، یعنی اس لیول کے جو ہیں وہ جن کو ہم کہیں کہ یعنی خود کام کرنے والے یا کام اس سوچ والے میرے پاس اگر گریجویٹس ہوتے جو 100 اور لوگوں کے لیے بھی ڈیسنٹ ورک جو ہے وہ پرووائڈ کرتے. اور اسی طرح سے ہم اگر یونیورسٹیز میں اپنی ریسرچ کو اس طرح ریلیونٹ بناتے کہ ہماری انڈسٹریز یہاں پہ فلرش کرتی، دوسرے ہمارے ساتھ جو ڈیولپمنٹ کے ادارے ہیں وہ ہمارے ساتھ فلرش کرتے، تو ایک آئیڈیا کے آنے سے، ایک گریجویٹ کے ایک آئیڈیا سے آپ کو سینکڑوں جو لوگ ہیں وہ اس کے ساتھ ایسے ملیں گے کہ جو کہ آپ ان کو جاب پرووائڈ کر سکتے ہو. تو یہ جو SDG 8 ہے، this is extremely relevant for the universities, for the institutions in Pakistan، کہ ہمیں اس کے اوپر جو ہے وہ ضرور وہ کرنا چاہیے اگر ہم یہ چاہتے ہیں کہ ہم ایریڈیکیٹ کر لیں یہاں سے پاورٹی کو اور انہینس کر لیں پراسپیرٹی فار آل ان دا سوسائٹی اکراس دا لائف کورس. تو یہ جو ہے یہ بہت زیادہ وہ امپورٹنٹ ہوگا. اچھا، ایک اور جو سوشل پروٹیکشن ہیز ریمینڈ پروڈکٹیو in addressing the poverty, reducing inequality and promotion of economic growth، یہ جو ہے یہ اس حوالے سے بہت زیادہ امپورٹنٹ ہے. اور اس کے اوپر ہمیں I'm happy کہ آپ نے یہاں سے یونیورسٹی سے یہ آواز اٹھائی ہے اور ہمارے پاس جو گورنمنٹ کے اداروں کے لوگ ہیں وہ بیٹھے ہوئے ہیں، وہ اس آواز کو وہاں تک پہنچا سکتے ہیں. تو ہم اس کو انشاءاللہ ایک اس کی جو ریکمنڈیشنز ہیں وی ول شیئر دس ود دا گورنمنٹ، تاکہ وہ اس کے اوپر کام کریں. اور کوئی وقت انشاءاللہ اس طرح ضرور آئے گا، یہ نہیں ہوگا کہ پاکستان ہر وقت اس طرح کے فائنینشیل اس کی ہیلتھ ایسی ہوگی جیسے آج کل ہماری ہے، تو بہتر بھی ہو جائے گی انشاءاللہ. تو اس سے پھر ہم یہ پروگرامز دینے کے قابل ہو جائیں گے. تو تیسری چیز جو میں یہاں پہ وہ جو بتا رہا تھا کہ ادارے تو ہیں ملک کے اندر. اب ہمارے پاس جو ڈی جی صاحب بیٹھے ہوئے ہیں، ان کا جو ادارہ ہے BISP، پاکستان میں میرے خیال میں سوشل پروٹیکشن کے حوالے سے ون آف دا لارجسٹ پروگرامز یہ جو ہے یہ BISP کا پروگرام ہے. اب اس میں بھی تھوڑا سا، لیکن یہ ہے کہ اس کو ذرا اور ایک بہتر اس میں ہم دیکھنا چاہتے ہیں کہ یہ اس کی یعنی ان ایکویلٹی کے ساتھ ساتھ ہم یہ ہے کہ پہلے تو ہمیں خود آنیسٹ ہونا پڑے گا، کیونکہ جو پچھلی رپورٹس آئی تھیں وہ رپورٹس کوئی اتنی انکریجنگ نہیں تھیں کہ جس میں اگر میں آفیسر ہوں اور اگر میں نے اپنے آپ کو وہاں پہ رجسٹر کروایا ہے تو یہ میں نے بہت زیادہ زیادتی کی، میں نے ملک کے غریبوں کے ساتھ زیادتی کی. یہ نہیں ہونا چاہیے. ہمیں یعنی آنیسٹی اور اس کا مظاہرہ اس میں وہ کرنا ہے. اور BISP جیسے پروگرامز جو ہیں وہ اس پروٹیکشن میں ایک اچھا رول پلے کر سکتے ہیں، اور میں سمجھتا ہوں کہ ان کو سب سے زیادہ آگے بڑھنا چاہیے. اور اب جو باقی ایریاز ہیں ان میں تو ضرور وہ جو ہے وہ ہوتی رہیں گی، لیکن سندھ میں نہ نکلیں وہاں سے اور کر لیں وہاں کے ان لوگوں کے لیے. وہ در بدر ہو گئے اور یہ جس حالت میں وہ پڑے ہوئے ہیں یہ بہت ہی زیادہ پینفل ہے کہ وہاں تک اپروچ ہی ابھی تک کوئی نہیں کر سکتا. یہ حامد میر جو یہ پچھلے 3 دنوں سے دکھا رہا ہے ٹیلی ویژن کے اوپر، جب وہاں پہ پہنچنے کی کوشش کرتا ہے، دیٹ از ٹیریبل اور فرائٹننگ بھی بہت ہے. اور پھر یہ ہے کہ میں نے کہا کہ ہمارے اور دین کے درمیان خلیج بھی آ گئی ہے. وہ بیچارے وہاں پہ کس حالت میں ہیں، اور ڈاکو جو ہیں وہ کشتی میں وہاں تک پہنچ جاتے ہیں اور ان کے پاس اگر کچھ ہوتا ہے تو وہ بھی لوٹ لیتے ہیں. ہم کیسی قوم ہیں؟ اس طرح کے اس میں تاریخ کون لکھے گا، یا ہم کسی کو کیا بتائیں گے؟ دنیا جو ہے وہ تو کہتی ہے کہ ہم نے اس طرح سے، جس طرح پاکستان میں یہ فلڈز جو آئے ہوئے جو تباہی ہوئی ہے، ہم نے دنیا میں اس سے پہلے کہیں اور وٹنس نہیں کی. اور ادھر سے ہماری یہ والی حالت ہے. اگر ہم یہ والی نیوز ان کو وہ بھجوا دیں کہ دیکھو آپ لوگ تو یہ کہہ رہے ہم تو یہ بھی کر رہے ہیں، تو پھر تو وہ اچھا نہیں ہوگا. تو اس میں ہمیں جو ہے وہ خیال رکھنا چاہیے. آئی ایم گریٹفل ٹو دی وٹ از دی ادر آرگنائزیشن جو آپ کے ساتھ ہے، SPRC. I'm grateful to the SPRC and the Department of Sociology of the Faculty of Social Sciences کہ انہوں نے اسٹوڈنٹس کو اویئر کرانے کے لیے سوشل پروٹیکشن جیسی اس کو ان کو انٹروڈیوس کروایا. اینڈ دے ول بی ایبل ٹو ٹیل دیئر ادر کلاس فیلوز، کلیگز، یونیورسٹی فیلوز آلسو کہ دس از آلسو ون تھنگ دیٹ شوڈ بی دیئر ان دا سوسائٹی. اور اس کے اوپر ہمیں جو ہے آگے بھی قوم کو اس کے اوپر کام کرنا چاہیے. آئی تھینک یو ویری مچ فار گیونگ می دس اپرچونٹی. تھینک یو ڈاکٹر صاحب. اینڈ پاکستان پائندہ باد.
Thank you, Honorable Rector, for giving another side view of social protection that we are learning today. We have the last speaker to conclude this session is Dr. Safdar Sohail Saab. Sir, if you come and conclude this whole event that we did today, please, floor is yours.
After Rector Saab has spoken from his heart, I would not like to add much to it, but to just reiterate what he has said, that this institution can produce wonders by its work, by entrepreneurship, by focus on this particular aspect, which is extremely important, about which we have spoken the whole day. I'm personally impressed by the honesty of the faculty, that somehow this issue, which for us is day in and day out issue of thinking to give Pakistan a robust social protection system, which is resilient, which is shock responsive also. But it's never too late. I'm very happy that a large number of student body and faculty, and now finally Rector Sahab Tashrif khud leke aaye hain, which speaks of the ownership and importance which is being given to this subject, which is going to touch us all. We would also become old. We may have, God forbid, disabilities in our homes. We may be unemployed, and the kind of acceleration of economic impoverishment that Pakistan is experiencing. Now our social protection needs have become immense, and during the day we have all heard, I actually had identified many points, but it's rather late. This is very clear that whatever we have in the name of social protection is inadequate, it's patchy, it does not respond at all to the actual needs, even to the minimum. Both Stephen Kidd, Ms. Shireen Saddozai brought it out very clearly. So the key messages now which have been recorded, and which SPRC and Sociology Department will produce also, these are research questions for you. That why is it so? And what are the inadequacies in the current program? What are the major dilemmas between social protection and social security? So, sir, we promise on behalf of the Social Protection Resource Center that we would remain closely associated with the Sociology Department. We have had many useful discussions in the intervals also, and it is a big cause, so together we can make a difference, and it's my privilege to thank the Rector Sahab and the management and the support staff. Organizing a conference of this kind, an international conference with the guests speaking from abroad, is a big task which has been done excellently. So we as a partner are also very happy, and I would like to compliment Dr. Razia Safdar, the Executive Director of Social Protection Resource Center, and the young researchers, Heather, Fatma, Taskeen, who have put in a lot of effort on that. But as has been said earlier, this is just a beginning. So let's take it much more seriously, take it forward. So we're very happy to be partner with this august institution. And with this, I thank everybody here and wish you a nice rest of the evening. But students, I mean, obviously they were the main audience and beneficiaries. We would really like a lot of, particularly in Masters and MPhil and PhD, theses being written on different aspects of social protection which have been identified here, and we would be very happy to help to provide technical guidance to the students. And I have suggested to the faculty to introduce courses, as Dr. Alia has also said, to take social protection as a major course and then indigenize the knowledge in the process also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for giving and concluding this session. And now we are also wanted to give a shield to the speakers, and I request to the Honorable Rector to please come here so we can have a shield distribution to the speakers. Mir Saab, if you can come here, please. We have another speaker, Dr. Razia. Dr. Rabia Gul. The Chief Organizer, Dr. Ikhlaq Saab. moderator, I invite Dr. Madhia.
Now I would like to announce the name of Dr. Saud to collect his sheet as a moderator for the current session. Now I would like to invite Mr. Haider to receive his shield.
At the end, I will request to Dr. Safdar Saab to please give a shield to Honorable Rector for coming and joining today in this session.